she gave me what I call the email of doom. 13 single-spaced pages.
Oh my gosh.
All kind of saying, you made the book so much worse. That was probably the closest I've ever come to giving up.
She created a magical world that millions escape into. But first, she pivoted career paths, changed the first book over 20 times, and came head-to-head with Perseverance. Today, Shannon Messenger is here to share a deeply personal story about what it's really like to become a best-selling author and all the ups and downs that we don't know about, alongside her tips for confidence and perseverance. Welcome to Hack Your Happiness. Today, we're speaking with Shannon Messenger. Welcome, Shannon.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you for joining us today. We are so excited to talk to you. You are an incredible author of a huge book series, The Keeper of the Lost Cities, and now you're releasing the graphic novelization version of these books, which I think is just so cool. But it's been kind of a long journey to get to this point, so can we kind of rewind the clock and you can tell us how you got started?
Yeah, it's funny. I've been doing this for so long, it kind of just sneaks up on you. The years go by. And so I had this moment. I was at an event in Jacksonville a couple of months ago, and it suddenly occurred to me that most of the readers there were not born when when the first book came out, and certainly when I had the original idea. So I kind of like posed it. I'm like, raise your hand if you were born before 2012. And it was pretty much just all the parents. And I was just like, wow, okay, that's crazy. Yeah, so I had the original idea in 2008. And it took me about a year to kind of do the world building, and then I started writing it in 2009. I got an agent in 2010. We sold it in 2011, and then the first book came out in 2012, which was, it feels like it was just yesterday, but that was, 13 years ago, which is just madness. And here I am still writing it. So I have spent more than a decade with these imaginary children in my head, and it is very cool and very strange.
Amazing. I think it's so cool how, your books have this like kind of timelessness to them that like the next kind of generation of readers who were not born then, like you were saying, are still, reading and enjoying those books.
Absolutely. And I love how you spent a year world building. I think that's definitely seen throughout the book.
Did you always know that you wanted to be an author?
I actually didn't. When I was younger, I was very focused on the fact that I liked to draw. And that was kind of what had been noticed by teachers and my parents. And so everyone was kind of like steering me toward art. But the one thing that really frustrated me with art was that I am not good at drawing from my head. I kind of need to see something in order to be able to draw it. And so I would get all of these really cool, fantastical ideas, and I couldn't quite get them to look on the page like the way that I wanted them to. And I kept thinking it was just training. I needed to just take more art classes, practice more, and I would get there. And I finally got all the way to college and was taking like an entire semester of nothing but art. And I realized, I can improve a little bit, but that is definitely something that you kind of have. And I don't. And so I would get really frustrated because, I'd be in this class with other students who had it. And it would be like the teacher would give us an assignment and they'd just immediately start sketching. And it'd be like, draw a flying animal. And they would have an elephant that was flying and had wings. And the wings looked anatomically correct. And the elephant looked anatomically correct. And I could not do that. And so I realized like this was always going to frustrate me. I was always going to be disappointed with what came out on the page because it was never going to look quite like what was in my head. And so I had this kind of existential crisis of like, well, what do I do now? I've been pursuing art my whole life and now I'm not going to pursue it anymore. What do I do? And my mom was just like, okay, deep breaths. How about you just take a class on a whim? And so I signed up for a broadcast writing and production class. And I'll admit, I picked it mostly because it sounded like a class where I'd get college credit for watching TV. And it was. But it was also a writing class. And kind of we had all these little mini assignments, but the overarching assignment for the class was we had to create our concept for a 1-hour TV drama and then write the pilot script. And oh my gosh, it was so much fun. And it was just like, what I also noticed was that for the first time, what was in my head was coming out on the page. Like if I wanted someone to laugh, I could get them to laugh. If I wanted them to see a character a certain way, I could do that. I just had to use words instead of trying to draw it. And so it felt like that thing that I had been chasing for a very long time. I finally figured out the way to do it. But it was a broadcast class and I was growing up in Southern California, so I kind of naturally got steered toward Hollywood, and ended up a film major and then graduated, tried to work in Hollywood, and just realized that Hollywood is extremely collaborative. You know, I mean, a film is hundreds of millions of dollars. They're not going to just put that in the hands of one person and say, go. It's, you know, a team, and I am not a team player. I'm a control freak, and I didn't want all these people like having input into my project. And so I kind of had this, again, second existential crisis of my life of like, how did I get here? I hate this so much and I don't want to do this anymore. And how could I have majored in this and not realized this? And what do I do now? And that's when I kind of stepped back and realized there are other things you can write. You know, I got here because I loved writing. There are other things. And hey, well, what about those book things? And, you know, that was when it was kind of like, oh, this is such a better fit. I don't know why it took me so long to get here, but you know, I learned things at each one of those steps along the journey that I don't regret. But yeah, it was not necessarily that like, I want to be an author from the moment I was a kid and now here I am kind of dream.
I want to take a moment and step back to what you mentioned about art. And I think that that's something that people don't really talk about very much, because oftentimes, you know, you have a passion and then it's just like, don't give up. Like, you know, you can't give up. You have this talent and, you know, you're so good at it. Why would you give up if, you know, you're so close to getting there? But if you really feel like you're not getting somewhere and you just don't really see yourself even enjoying it anymore, I think it's totally okay to kind of give something up. Yeah. Because as long as it's something that, you know, I think it's the time to give up.
Yeah, it's that funny balance of you certainly don't want to give up just because something's hard, because most things that are worth doing are hard and are going to take some work, and very, very few people, you know, sit down and do something for the very first time and are perfect at it. And we don't like those people, whoever they are, you know. So it's that delicate balance of, yes, you certainly want to be ready to put the work in, to put the time in, to train yourself and hone your craft and all of that. But at the same time, you have limits and you also have your own like frustrations and stuff. And that's what I came to realize is I wasn't a bad artist. I'm good at many things, but I wasn't good at the things that I wanted to be good at when it came to art. And so that was where I had to kind of step back and say, okay, this is not working for me. This is not what I want to do. And so, and again, I also realized it can be a hobby, you know, and that's kind of the other thing that you realize as you go through life is that maybe you decide to set a dream aside for a moment, but that doesn't mean there are certain things that, yes, there are timelines associated with them. But for the most part, like I could still go back and take art classes and decide that I wanted to try to pursue a career that's more art focused if I wanted to. And so we feel this pressure of like, we have to have it all figured out. We have to know everything. We have to make this decision and have our path chosen and stick to it. And we don't want to lose a single second because everyone else is going to get ahead of us. And I get where that comes from, but it's also like, it's okay. It is definitely okay to say, you know what? I tried this. It just isn't working for me. You know, what I realized was that it was making me hate art. And I think that was the biggest thing, was that I, like, by the end of that semester, I packed up every single art supply that I had, including some things that weren't really art supplies, but that it was just like, no, it's all going in. And I shoved it under the bed and I was like, I don't want to look at it. I don't want to touch it. And it was such a relief to do that. And that was when I kind of realized again, yeah, I think I'm on the wrong path here, because if this is my passion, if this is my dream, like, yes, momentarily thinking about maybe this is too much work versus like actually packing it up. And instead of feeling sad, feeling relieved, I was just like, okay, I think my brain is telling me like, we're done with art for right now. We're trying to turn art into something that it isn't meant to be for me. And let's just not, you know.
That is such an excellent point in
Definitely.
like knowing when you've hit your limit, and sometimes it's important to keep pushing through challenges. You can't just give up every time, but also like being okay with like, you know what, I'm going to set this aside for right now. It's not like a no, it's just like a not right now type of situation. And I also really love what you highlighted, Shannon, about making it a hobby, because I think sometimes we get into our minds of like, oh, I really love this sport, or I really love this, I don't know, maybe it's art, or maybe for someone else it is writing, but you don't want to pursue it as a career, maybe because you want to keep it kind of, spontaneous. You work on it when you want to, or keep it exactly how you envision it. And in that sense, it's okay to not, go all in on every single aspect of your life. It's good to have different kind of streams in that sort of sense. But I also love about how you said sometimes you do need to keep pushing through, those tough days and those challenges and those troughs for things that you really are passionate about, and you can see kind of a way forward. And I want to kind of talk about that a bit, because I've heard that your first book took about 20 drafts before you got it published, but you kept going, and I think that's amazing, and obviously it is an incredible hit. So how did you stay motivated, and did you ever want to quit that situation?
Yeah, again, it's one of those tricky things, because most authors that you'll talk to, they have like a stack of books that they wrote that weren't good enough, that didn't sell. They finished them, they revised them, they shined them up as best they could, and they just weren't quite there. And then they finally, after, I know some where it's like 10, 15, 20 books before they finally got to something that was right. And so I definitely had that voice in my head that was like, am I just trying to save an idea that like I've already done all I can with it, and I should just let this go? Like, it's just one of those books that I should shelve and put away. I mean, to begin with, the first 11 drafts, I didn't finish. I would get about halfway in and I would realize I was bored. And that's kind of like writing 101. If you're bored with the story you're telling, you're probably telling it wrong or doing something wrong. So I would get about to that halfway point, and I'd just be like, I'm bored. This is not working. And I'd have that moment of give up or keep going. And it was just like, no, I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. This is different than writing screenplays, which was the only training I had. Let's just pause, do some brainstorming and start fresh and change a few things and start again. And around draft 11 was when I finally kind of figured out what I was doing wrong. I was right. Again, it was too much of my screenwriting training. There's a reason why whenever you watch a movie, you're almost always going, well, where did that scene go? And that scene and that scene, like anytime it's a movie based on a book you love, like stuff disappears, because movies are so much less than a book. They have way less space, way less time, just the way that we process information visually versus in a book. You can't have as many characters, you can't have as many settings, it doesn't work. And so in order to make something a movie, you have to take a bunch of stuff out. And so I was kind of doing that without realizing it. As I was plotting my book, I was leaving stuff out. Like I was writing the movie version, but as a book, and it was making the world's most boring book. So once I figured that out, then it started getting a lot better. It was draft 13 that got me an agent. But she made it very clear from her offer of representation, it had this letter with it that was like, I think you need some work on this draft. I wanted you to see my notes, and, if we're going to work together, then this is kind of, what I think you need to do with your book. And it was like 5 single-spaced pages of like, this needs to be fixed and this needs to be fixed. But it all made sense. It was all just like, yeah, no, she's right. I totally didn't get that to come through, or that scene wasn't doing what I thought it was. And so I was excited. And instead of feeling daunted, draft 14 was close. But she still felt I had a few things. And then draft 15, she was like, yeah, I think we're there. Let's try to sell it. And draft 15 piled up about 12 rejections, all kind of saying the same thing. And so it was kind of that point of like, this feedback is really consistent. It's not, obviously reading is subjective. Editors love different things. But if you're getting everyone kind of saying the same thing, it's like, okay, I think they have a point here. And so it was kind of, do I revise or do I give up? And again, it was like, well, the point they're making kind of makes sense. So don't give up. Let's keep going. I've come this far. I've got an agent. We've come this far. Let's do it. But it also got in my head, like all those rejection letters, especially because my agent sent them all to me. I made the mistake of telling her I had a thick skin and I could handle things. And I do not apparently have a thick skin and I cannot handle things. Because she was just like, it'd be better for you to read exactly what they're saying so that you can kind of figure out what makes sense to you as far as what you want to change, that kind of thing. And so I went into draft 16 with all of these voices in my head saying, this is wrong. And then I had this other little voice that they hadn't said, but it was just like, but these are editors. And if the editors thought this problem could be fixed, wouldn't they have bought the book and just had me fix it? So it must be that this problem is unfixable. And that little voice was just kind of in the back of my head as I was writing draft 16. And so I sent it off knowing it wasn't perfect, but just kind of hoping my agent would be able to give me a few pages of notes and we'd go on. And instead she gave me what I call the email of doom. 13 single-spaced pages, all kind of saying, yeah, you made the book so much worse. And at first, that was probably the closest I've ever come to giving up. Like, my reaction was just like, I'd had this voice in the back of my head thinking this problem was unfixable, and now I have 13 single-spaced pages from my agent saying, yes, you are right, Shannon, this is unfixable. Everything you have tried has made it worse. I had no other ideas. It's time to give up this book and just, not necessarily give up writing, but it's time to give up this book. It's time to take a break from it. Maybe someday you'll be smart enough to figure this out, but right now you're not. And so I did two things. I took a little break, and I also sent it to a writer friend. And that writer friend said, well, can I also see the email of doom? She's like, because I'm just curious, she's like, I want to read the book first, and then I want to read your agent's notes. And when she got back to me, she said, the thing is, Shannon, I know you're thinking that what your agent is telling you is that this book isn't salvageable, but I see anything but that. I see her saying, what about this? Or what about this? Or what about this? Or what about this? Or like anything other than what you did. And I don't think she would take the time to type up 13 single-spaced pages of ideas if she didn't think you were smart enough to fix this. So obviously, you have to get in your own headspace. You have to decide what you're going to do. But I don't think she's telling you to give up. And if you want to give up, that's on you. And so I had to kind of process that. And then I decided, I'd come this far. Was I really going to give up now? And so I had to, again, kind of step back from it. And eventually what I realized was that I had gone back to making the same mistake that I had made in those first 11 drafts that I never finished. I had to take some stuff out because it was not working. And I was scared to put anything else in because, I didn't know the other stuff would cause problems. What if I put it was like, okay, so these things they liked. I don't want to mess with any of that because, I know they like these. I know they didn't like this. And so I had taken all the fun out of the book and I had made it boring. And so I had to kind of dig deep and trust myself to come up with new stuff to replace the other stuff I'd taken out. And, that's when I wrote draft 17, which wasn't quite there yet, but it was at least on the right track. And then 18 was the one that we shopped again. It wasn't a quick sell because Keeper was also not what the market was looking for. It was right at the prime of Twilight and Hunger Games and everything was YA. And here I was with this little middle grade book with a girl main character trying to compete against Percy Jackson and Harry Potter and Artemis Fowl and all of these boy main characters in a category that was primarily focused on boy readers. And so it was not an easy sell, but it sold. And then that editor had me do revisions because an editor's job is to edit. And so I got to revise it 2 more times. And that's why the published version is draft 20. And yes, definitely along the way, I thought, again, many, many times, but it was just that I loved the idea. And I really did think that what I kept seeing was that there was a problem that I could fix and not that, it's certain moments I convinced myself, nope, it's unfixable. But for the most part, when I would rally, it was because I realized, no, there is something that I can fix. And if I can fix it, then I can make this a workable idea. And so that's why I never set the idea aside. That and the characters just wouldn't get out of my head. Like, I'd try not to think about the story. I'd try to tell myself that I was taking a break, and within a few days I'd start dreaming about them again and thinking about them, and it was just like, all right, this story's never going to go away. I'm going to be haunted by it forever. And I'm still, all these years later, still daydreaming about it and haunted by it. So, in some ways I was right.
Your story is incredible, Shannon, and I really love how you kind of make that distinction of like, when it came to art and when it came to screenwriting and working in Hollywood, you couldn't find what you wanted to fix, and so therefore you knew it was time to move on.
Yeah.
But in this case, with your first book, you could keep identifying what you needed to do to move forward because you had a really supportive support system of friends and of editors, and also just you yourself, and you loved the characters. You could see how to repair something or change it up, and so you could keep going. I think that's such a great thing for anyone listening, and that I want to incorporate into my life, is like, when you're kind of at a challenge or you're not sure what to do, if you should quit or try something else or just keep going, and maybe it's just time, is knowing what can I do to fix, what can I do to move forward. And if you can't come up with anything, maybe it is time to shift your thinking or do something different or take a break. But if you can find something to fix, it's such an actionable way forward, breaking it down into little pieces.
Absolutely.
Do you know someone in your life who is struggling to feel like they belong or like they fit in, or to truly just be themselves? I think we all know someone that way. I definitely know a few friends who I'm sending this episode to after. So spread a small bit of happiness and let the people in your life who come to mind know that you're caring and thinking about them by sending this episode link to them. It's a super small and free and simple thing to do that truly can transform someone's perspective and bring them some happiness and confidence. So send this episode link out now, and let's get back into the conversation.
And I just want to mention, you are so perseverant. I mean,
Yes.
that would be so difficult to do. I mean, 20 different revisions is crazy. What are your tips for others to also be more perseverant?
Again, I think it's kind of trying to sort out the difference between, because you're going to have multiple voices in your head. You're going to have the voices from supportive people, and if they're truly supportive people, they will be telling you things that you need to work on too. A good coach or a good mentor isn't going to tell you everything you do is roses and sunshine and perfection, and how dare someone ever tell you otherwise, because not everything you do is roses and sunshine and perfection. So you're going to have those voices pushing you, telling you to be better, but you're also, especially if you're like me, I have anxiety, I'm a gold medal worrier and all of that, and it's like, you're going to have those other negative voices in your head that are just you worrying, what if I'm not good enough? What if I will never be good enough? What if I'm just trying for something that is just impossible, and I am just spinning my wheels in the mud, and I'm never going to get out of this rut unless I just give up, And it's not an automatic thing. And that's the thing, you kind of have to give yourself the grace to allow that you're not always going to know which voice is, and sometimes it's okay to have a bad day and decide that you just need to take a break, take a walk, do something to get yourself out of it, but also really challenge yourself to make sure that you are saying, is that voice coming from me and my own insecurities and self-doubts, or is that voice coming, and so in that way, like, it was good that I had the rejection letters from the editors and stuff, because I could go back and read it again, and it was like, I could read it through the Shannon anxiety lens of like, they hate everything, I'm terrible, nothing will ever be good. Or I could read it through the lens, like, it took a friend to help me see it, of like, no, this is a person who is seriously invested in you and believes in you and thinks you can do it. And they're just telling you, you need to dig deep. It's like, it's, that you're on toward the third lap or final stretch of the marathon, and you're tired and your feet are blistered and you want water and you kind of want to give up. And they're like, but you've still got enough in the tank. Keep running, So, it's really just kind of, it's a weird headspace, and it's allowing yourself both. Like, it's allowing yourself to admit that you have those insecurities, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you also have to decide how much power you want to give them. And you have to be willing to listen to feedback, but also not let it, kind of crush you. And at times, just to really mess with your head, you have to be willing to say, okay, that suggestion doesn't work for me. Like, I get edits even now where it'll be like, yeah, no, that doesn't work for me. But that doesn't mean that I get to just be like, ignore the edit letters, send the pages flying, I'm free. You know, it's like, okay, there's still a problem, but maybe their solution isn't the right solution. But that doesn't mean I get to just be like, cool, I don't have to change a thing. It means that I still have to come up with my own solution and figure it out. So sorry, I know that answer is probably all over the place.
No, I love it.
Yeah.
And I just think it's really powerful that you mentioned let yourself feel your emotions, because I feel like oftentimes like it kind of comes like black or white. It's like either you're dwelling on it, you like hate the fact that like you're feeling this way, but like you can't get out, and it's like you're just sitting in this emotion that, you know, makes you feel really bad, or, you know, you're just ignoring that and you're not letting yourself feel bad and kind of having this like toxic positivity, and you kind of like know it's not real, and it just also doesn't make you feel great because you're like suppressing those feelings. And so I think allowing yourself to feel that and then being able to move on, as well as I really appreciate how you mentioned like having a good supportive network that you're able to talk to and say, you know, this is how I'm feeling, is definitely a good way for you to get those emotions out so then you can move on.
I also think something that I really got from what you shared, Shannon, is the importance of looking kind of to the big picture, like the overarching view of a situation. Like, it's okay to take a little break, or, you know, maybe not work on your goal for a few days, whatever it might be. But that doesn't mean you decide to quit altogether. It just means that you're taking a little pause, and even like some minor detours, like maybe some harsh feedback, or, you know, just feeling really unmotivated or discouraged. If you look at it kind of from a zoomed out picture lens, you can realize that like this is just like a small little divot rather than like this is the absolute end of the world. And I think that even like just recognizing that is so helpful in being perseverant, because when you can realize that each small thing is not as big of a deal if you look in the bigger lens of a goal or of your whole life, really, it can feel a lot more empowering in that sense as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's realizing that it all feels huge. I mean, I still, most authors I know, like when that edit letter shows up in your inbox, you kind of have that moment of like, you know, I'm not going to open that yet. I'm going to go get, you know, like my favorite beverage and my favorite snack. And I'm going to, you know, like you kind of have to brace for it, because it does get that like gut punch feeling of like anytime anyone gives you criticism, most of us are battling that inner voice telling us maybe I'm not good enough. I feel like most authors, we talk about like every time we sit down to write a book, we have this sense of like, what are words? How do I word today? Like you think you know how to write a book, but you only knew how to write the last book that you wrote. And now you're sitting down to write this new book and you're like, wait, I don't know how to do this anymore, because you have to start all over again with each book. And so, you know, you're certainly going to have those moments of like, insecurity, self-doubt, worrying that you didn't get things right. And sometimes you know that you didn't get things right. There are times when I'm sending my editor pages like, I know this is a mess. I don't know how to fix it. Help me. And even though I know that, when I actually have them confirm, yeah, so this is a mess, there's still that moment of like, well, ouch, like, what do you mean? You know, what do you mean it's a mess? You know, it's perfect, right? Surely, you know, so you have to kind of be in a space where you say, okay, this is going to hurt a little bit. It's like ripping the Band-Aid off a little bit, but like giving yourself that moment of like, okay, I'm going to dig my fingernail under there and I'm going to wait a second before I pull, because I just know like this is going to sting a little bit, you know?
Totally. I love that analogy, and I really relate to that. And I think what I usually try to do, you know, I just recently have been in social studies, we're doing a lot of writing for like essays and like position papers and stuff. And sometimes when I'm writing it, I kind of get like really stressed out because I'm like, am I doing a good job? Am I not doing a good job? And at the end, it's like I'm reading over it and I'm like, I don't know whether am I rambling too much? And eventually, you know, when you do submit it, because you can't like redo it the whole thing in 20 minutes, I always just tell myself, like, no matter the mark I get, it doesn't really change who I am as a person. One bad mark doesn't define me. One bad position paper doesn't define me. And kind of realizing that you can be like an individual without being attached to the criticism of your work.
And also just like kind of relating to what you said earlier, in being perseverant is also like looking for the next step. I think we can get out of our own headspace and just focus on, okay, yes, it's hard, but what can I do to get through it? It's such like a great way to change our thoughts and our feelings into like something more tangible in a way. Kind of shifting gears to talk about your incredible book series. They are well based in fantasy, and I feel like your books really do relate to those themes of feeling like you don't fit in and then eventually finding your tribe one day. And I'm curious, because your books center on these themes, have you ever experienced this feeling in real life? And if so, what's your advice for others on how to find your tribe in the real world?
I mean, I'm an introvert. Like I talk a lot, so I think they have even finally come up with like a new personality profile that I can't remember the name of. But I before that they always used to say I was like an introvert with extrovert tendencies, because when I'm nervous I talk a lot, and so it seems like to people like, oh, she's an extrovert, she's loud and she talks a lot, and really it's like I'm an introvert screaming inside, help me, you know. So, I mean, I feel like I'm still that person who doesn't necessarily feel like I have, I think that was part of my journey was I had a lot of people in my lives who were extroverts, and it was sort of like the more friends, the merrier. And it was almost like this popularity contest of like, who had the most friends. And if you only had like one or two friends, then somehow that was failing, even though actually having one or two awesome friends is amazing and a gift in this world. But when you're in that kind of social circle, it doesn't feel like it. Somehow it feels like it's a numbers game. And if you can only count X number of, it's like, I guess it's the equivalent now of like having followers on your, or likes or things like that. You know, I was pre-social media, so I didn't have that, but it was still very much like, you don't have this huge group of people that you connect with, that you hang out with, that connect to you, that you hang out with. So feeling very much like, oh, there must be something wrong with me because I don't have that. And really kind of wondering if there was something wrong. And really kind of, again, a lot of like, I was going to get into college. I raced through high school to get to college early. I started college at 16. And a large part of that was, it was just like, maybe there is where I will find my people. And then it was, okay, so not in community college. Once I get to film school with other film people, then I will find my people. And I mean, that's not to say that I haven't over time found my people, but I have also come to realize that, which I think is kind of Sophie's journey too, is that there's more value in authenticity than in acceptance. And so, it's way better to be yourself. And even if that means you only find one or two other people that value that, that is such a healthier and better space to be in than trying to be accepted by everyone. And I feel like that to some extent is kind of a lot of people's journeys as we go through life. We kind of realize that there's actually more value in authenticity than acceptance. And honestly, the fact that that's kind of what comes through the story is something totally unintentional. I'm never the kind of author that's like, I have a theme or a message that I want to convey, and I'm going to sit down and figure out a story that will shape it. I write very much based on my characters. And so my character starts out as a 12-year-old girl who's spent her whole life feeling out of place and then finds out she actually is out of place and thinks, cool, now when I go to this new place, I'm finally going to fit in. And then she gets there and realizes, oh no, no, I'm still different. I'm still, not the same as everybody else. And I'm still struggling to be accepted. And she spends, a lot of the early books really kind of grappling with that and trying to be accepted. And then over the course of it realizes she has to be herself. And I think that's kind of the journey that a lot of us go through as we come out of high school, go through college, enter adulthood, all of that kind of thing. We start realizing that we can't pretend to be what people want us to be. We can't pretend to be accepted. It's not a popularity contest. It's not all of the things that high school and all of those things can make you feel. And it's just better to kind of be yourself and find people who respond to that, even if it's a small number. So, I mean, I have over time, I've found wonderful people, kind of picked them up here and there. And it's still, I'm sure my list of people is shorter than the list that many other people have, but it works for me. I love it. I love them. And it's good, and again, it's that authenticity of like, own the fact that I'm not the kind of honestly, if I had 30 friends that all wanted to hang out all the time, that is my nightmare. So it's kind of better that I only have a handful that want to go out and we're at a table for 4 and I'm like, yay, I can do this, So again, it's that like staying true to who you are. There's nothing wrong with being the person that wants to be at a table for 30 if that's who you are. But if you're telling yourself that that's who you should be because that's what you think is what makes you popular or accepted, that's where you're starting to really put yourself in a weird headspace.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely.
I know what you mean. Like going through high school, I think I'm at my last year of high school right now, and it's so interesting because I've seen like how those social dynamics shift and change, and how hard it can be so difficult to figure out, like, do I like to be with a lot of people or do I not? Or maybe it's just these people that are not my people, but I do love large groups. And I think it's so interesting how, going through that journey and going through different friendships and relationships can help you in discovering more about yourself. And just, I think being able to say, you know what, I don't like to be at that table for 30 and that's okay. And I'm going to just do what makes me feel happy and comfortable is so powerful. And I really like how, you kind of shared that it's still the case for you is like, you don't want to be in a huge group of people. And that is, I think, the case for lots of people. I mean, there's lots of introverted people. I know I prefer to be with just a few people who I trust as well, like really close, and we can, have deep conversations and we know a lot about each other. And I think that that's what I like. And then I have friends who, they love to have big groups, and that's just them. They're super like bubbly.
Absolutely. And I love having Mercedes as my sister because it's like having a built-in best friend.
Yeah.
You don't really need to worry about that.
Exactly.
Holidays are coming up, and Mercedes and I's favorite gift idea is the Manta sleep mask. These sleep masks have 100% blackout. They are super comfortable to wear. They're great for travel. They're great for light sleepers who get waken up by light. It comes in a variety of different styles. They're 100% silk, so it's super comfy and super great for wear. And on top of that, they have these amazing little pockets that go over your eyes so it's not squishing on them. Shop now, link in show notes. And I know you said that you don't really have like themes or messages that you don't put into your books, but your books do have such amazing themes that kind of come out just at the end of it, like well-being, identity, and resilience. So what are your tips for others to embody and kind of be like the main character, Sophie?
I think, again, it really just kind of comes down to really putting yourself in the character's shoes. And at least for me, I feel like that's where all of the themes come out. Because, theme is just a life lesson. And life lessons happen to people, And so I just try to really treat all of my characters like people. They all have different arcs. Some we get to see more than others because it's always a juggle of trying to fit, book time and who gets as much page time as other characters and stuff. But I think that really is, I'm just always asking myself, okay, given everything that I know about Sophie right now, everything that I know about what she's been through, like, what's she going to do? And I try to really write that. And it's interesting because sometimes it means letting her make mistakes. Sometimes I'll be sitting there like as the grown up watching and I'm like, no, this is a terrible idea. Don't do this. Like, this is going to make your friends mad at you. This is going to possibly get you killed. Like, no, don't do it. But it's what she would do, and I have to remember that I'm sure were times where my parents were looking at me like, oh, Shannon, and we're teachers or everyone were looking at us like, no, don't do that. And you have to kind of make mistakes because that's where you learn. And I think it's funny because that's kind of where then a lot of the lessons or themes and stuff is, okay, so I let Sophie or the other characters make these messes and then we have to kind of watch them dig their way out of it. And as they do, that kind of gives a message to other readers to see, oh, okay, so if maybe I'm not going to, anger the ogre king and potentially get myself, dragged away to an ogre prison camp. But she was still doing something wrong in that moment. She was doing something hasty. She was, and maybe they can learn the lesson of, oh, okay, so maybe I shouldn't do that. Or also, if I get myself in a tricky situation, maybe it's not facing down an ogre death camp, but it's still, a mess that I've gotten myself in. Okay, how do I dig my way out of this? Or if she's done something to make her friends mad at her, like, how does she regroup? How does she rekindle those friendships? Or does she decide to let them go, One of my favorite moments was in Never Seen when there was this character that I don't even like. She drives me crazy. Stina. She's not a likable character. And Sophie kind of instantly dislikes her. But there's this moment in Neverseen where Stina kind of confronts Sophie about that. And is like, did you ever realize like why I don't like you? Because it starts out very much with Stina being mean to Sophie from the very beginning, but Stina has a valid point. Like in that first moment that Sophie meets her, Dex has kind of done something mean to Stina. Sophie doesn't know either of them, and yet she laughs and thinks that it's kind of funny that Dex has done this thing to Stina. And yes, we all know that, Stina kind of deserved it and Dex was defending himself and all of that, but still, it was kind of mean of Sophie to laugh and to just immediately side against Stina. And Stina gets to have that moment where she points that out, and Sophie gets to have that moment of like, oh crap, she's right. And it's like, that's such a real moment, because there are those moments when you realize like that person that you thought was just mean and awful and horrible and everything they've ever done was wrong. They come back and point out something that you did to them, and you're like, oh yeah. I guess that wasn't very nice of me that I said that or that I did that, or because we're all flawed people, and so again, having those kind of real, letting the characters not be perfect, I feel like that's kind of where a lot of the messages and stuff come in.
I really like that, and I think that's something we can all take away is like, let yourself not be perfect, because sometimes you'll learn more about other people or even about yourself or how like things to avoid doing in the future.
Absolutely.
Through like letting yourself, make those mistakes, because sometimes we can get so like, I think at least I've experienced moments in myself where I'm like, I don't want to say anything or do anything because I might say or do the wrong thing. But then if you never do or say the wrong thing, you'll also never do or say the right thing.
Exactly.
And so I really love that idea. And I really want to talk about, as your series has grown and as your readership has grown, you've got so many readers eagerly awaiting each book. And I'm curious, do you feel like pressure from your readers to, put out another book or have it be to their liking? And how do you personally manage this pressure?
Yeah, I mean, especially as I've had to slow down the later books and not have them come out as fast, I have definitely I learned early on I had to not read reviews at all, because a bad review obviously makes you feel like you're terrible, you're horrible, you wrote a horrible book. But even a good review, they tend to talk about things that they like in it, and then you start to think, oh no, I'm not really doing that in book 2. But they like that, so maybe I should try to work that in, or, and even things like fan mail, it's like for every fan mail letter that's like, I absolutely love that you do this, there's a fan mail letter that's like, please stop doing that and do more of this, or it's like, I will die if you do this, and then there's another person that's like, I will die if you don't do that, and you're just like, how do I make them all happy? I never will, and I started to realize kind of that a lot of times the things they ask for, if I gave it to them, they think they want it, but it's because they're imagining it differently than what it would actually be. And it's like, if I were to give this to you, then you probably wouldn't love it as much as you think you would. And a lot of times the scenes that get loved the most are the scenes that I don't necessarily try to plan. I just kind of let the story come to life. And so that's kind of what I had to realize, is I just kind of have to step back, not try to write what I think people want, because everyone wants different things and they also don't even know what they want. And there's a level of bravery there where you just kind of have to trust the story and trust that, you've gotten this far. Surely you're writing something that they're enjoying, and also know that sometimes, especially now that everyone's so attached to the characters, there's kind of that immediate instant reaction of no, I don't like this. And then it's like, settle back, think for a minute, reread it a couple of times, let it sit, and then maybe, so it's like the day that a book comes out, you never want to be online, because it's always those people that race through it, read it, and immediately, and their first reaction is I hated it, it didn't do anything that I thought it was gonna do, and it's like, okay, but what did it do? Can we step back and think about what it did do, and do we like that, and all of that. So that is definitely one kind of pressure. As far as the pressure to write faster and stuff, that has gotten very complicated between the fact that I am now a mom, and so my writing time gets a lot more limited. Publishing has also become a lot more complicated, especially with the success of the series. It used to be that I could have all the way up to a month before publication to finish the book and have it come out. It was a scary, tight deadline that stressed everybody out, but we could do it. But now, because we're having to print hundreds of thousands of copies of the book, they need me to be done months and months and months ahead of time, and so trying to like keep up with that book a year schedule like I was keeping up with, like, it's just, even if I didn't have kids, like the amount of time that they need now to be able to print my books versus how much time how many days there are in a year, like, it's not actually possible anymore. So I get a lot of people who are like, why is the next book not coming out? What's taking so long? Is she, it's sort of like if they ever see me doing anything on social media other than sitting at my laptop, they're like, why isn't she writing? And it's like, hey, I'm a person, I'm allowed to exist, so it's just kind of that, like, reminding yourself that all of that pressure is a good thing, because you wouldn't have that pressure if they didn't want your next book. But it's also like, and comments off, not reading those, staying away from it, because I will never write as fast as my readers can read, and I will never, be able to make all of them 100% happy with anything. And, even like there's ones that are like, add more books to the series, I hope she never ends it. And then there are people that are like, this next book better be the last book, I don't want, and I'm like, what do you do with that? You can never make both of those extremes happy. So what do you do, So yeah.
I love that. And I feel like that also like works with the authenticity piece, because, there are always going to be so many noises. There are always going to be so many voices that are trying to have a say. And
I feel like yours is, obviously the feedback you get is like on another level
from
absolutely. Like what most of us experience, but
there's always going to be voices and people sharing their opinion on something. And I think that in the end it boils down to, what do you want? How do you want to take the book? Do you want to write 30 more books, or do you think that this is the last one that you want to do? I think it's definitely a very brave thing to do.
And I think that for anyone, like when it comes to like, I guess the tendency to like want to please everyone and want to make everyone feel seen and important and acknowledged, that's a pressure that I think a lot of teens and people of all ages, we place on ourselves, because we want, to have good connections with people. And noting that, like, if you are doing everything for everyone, your heart's only going to be like in one place, that place that you actually, like, if you want to write a story a certain way, or if you want to, take your career a certain way, or if you want to study a certain thing, your heart is only going to be in that place. And so when your heart is not in something, it's not going to show up as authentically. It's not going to be as high quality. It's not going to, be as unique or compelling, because people can tell when your heart's not in something. And so I really like what you said about, just turning the comments off, not reading the reviews, because whether they're positive or negative feedbacks, they're still kind of swaying you in a way that isn't authentic.
Yeah, it's really definitely about stepping back and just trusting the story, for me at least. Like, that's how I've gotten here. That's how I've gotten through the 20 draft revision in the beginning, and how I've continued to go. And so it's just like, every time I start to, have those debates, do I add a book to the series? Do I not add a book to the series? It's like, well, what does the story need? Do I have questions that I haven't answered yet? Okay, then I probably need to add a book to the series. Do I not have questions? Is everything settled? Well, then that'll be the end, and that's what decides these things. And, I'm sure I will never make everyone happy. There will always be some that, I get Google alerts for Reddit threads that are like, oh, the series is going so downhill. Is anyone else so sick of Shannon Messenger? And all these things. And you're just like, okay, ouch, fine, it's fine. But, again, if they weren't talking about it, then the series would just be kind of disappearing. So it's a good thing, but it's also, it's good to try to avoid it, at least, especially for where my headspace is. It's like, all right, that's why I hired an assistant to read fan mail. I don't read comments. I say that in my Instagram bio, like, I'm not going to read your comments. I don't do DMs for lots of reasons. And, I just try to have a few barriers up, both to protect my time and also to protect that kind of creative space, so that it doesn't get too kind of hammered by all of these opinions, because that is where madness lays.
Absolutely. And I like how you have like an outline of like having these very like grounded questions, like, do I need to do this? Is there a question that I need to answer? Is like the series, like, what's a storyline that I haven't pulled on yet? And I think that for anyone of any kind of situation, any kind of age, having like really grounded questions and actionable steps is really nice to kind of take a step back, maybe make a list out of questions for yourself or of, you know, potential options to really ground yourself in your decision making.
Absolutely. And I personally just love the fact that you gave Sophie a stuffed animal, Ella, because you also have one. Why was it important for you to include this personal touch? And are there any other personal touches in the books that we may not have known of?
There's a couple. You know, I was actually trying really hard not to give Sophie too many things that were like me because I wanted to make sure that she felt like a completely separate person. And so really the decision, again, it kind of came down to the story. I realized that Sophie was going to have to leave her entire life behind, and she was only going to take one backpack of stuff with her, and that she was going to have to fill that backpack, even though it doesn't end up being useful. Her brain was going to tell her she needed to fill that backpack with clothes and shoes and practical stuff. And so she was really only going to get to take like a couple of special things. One would be family photos. That seemed like, you know, the most logical thing. And I was just like, what else would she, you know, if she only gets one other thing, one other sentimental thing. And I'd started thinking about, I had described her having a quilt on her bed that her mom had made. And so I had thought about her bringing a quilt, but that just kind of felt big and bulky. And like, I was just like, I don't know, this image of like Sophie dragging around this giant quilt didn't feel quite right. It wouldn't fit in a backpack. And so then I just kind of stepped back and asked myself, okay, so if I only got to take one backpack, what would I take? And even as a grown-up, my answer was Ella, you know? And so I just thought, all right, that actually feels like a special thing, especially because I know how much, especially when I was younger, having Ella to hold on to if I had nightmares, if I was scared, if I was feeling anxious about anything, having that comfort of something to physically hold on to was so helpful. And I thought, you know, Sophie's going into a world where she's going to have like actual enemies trying to kill her and real nightmares, and giving her that, you know, something to hold on to is kind of the least I could do for her. So Ella got written into the book. There's only really a couple of other things. Sophie and I share the same nervous habit. We both tug on our eyelashes when we get nervous, that has actually turned out to be a much bigger thing than I realized. I guess it's actually like a condition, or I don't even know if condition is right, but it's like a diagnosable, like there's a term for it, like trichophilia. I don't know. It's something where I get letters sometimes from like the society of it wanting to ask like about me choosing to represent it. I've had people be like, you know, maybe it was irresponsible to represent something. I'm just like, I just wrote from my own experience here. Like, this is just my own nervous habit. I never knew that it had a term. I never knew that it was a thing. It's just what I do. And I wanted to give it to Sophie because I wanted her to have a tell. I knew she was going to be the kind of character that was going to pretend to be okay when she was anything but okay. And so I wanted her to have something that would be very easy for her friends to notice and be like, oh, she's not okay. She needs our help, because she's not the kind of character to ask for it. And you can't expect 12-year-old kids to always be intuitive enough to know from very, very subtle cues like, oh, our friend needs help. So I wanted it to be something that was like really hard to not notice. And I knew from my own experience, as soon as you reach up and start tugging on your eyelashes, people are like, what are you doing? What's going on there? You know? And so that's why I gave it to Sophie. And it's something that she and I share. And I have written it only from the standpoint of like, this is what it has been for me. I certainly was not trying to represent, you know, the other aspects of it that I have now found out about. See what I mean about writing being complicated? And like all the things you don't think about. But yeah, that's kind of really the only other thing that off the top of my head jumps out as something that is like from me that went into the book.
That is so interesting that, you know, all these people like sending you letters to, but talking about Ella and, you know, having like that little stuffed toy, I think that's just sweet kind of sentiment to write in with the backpack, because I know that even growing up, like I had like a little hedgehog and Anastasia had a little sheep.
Yes.
And so I think that that's also something so like common for kids. And, you know, even like I still have my hedgehog and you still have your sheep.
Yes,
like,
I do.
Like we keep that type of stuff, or at least remember it really fondly. And so I think that's just a sweet little kind of relatable aspect as well for the reader. And now we have a fun little game that we outlined to help get to know you a little bit better and learn what brings you happiness. So the game is Keeper or Creeper, and it's inspired by your book series. So basically, Anastasia and I are going to read something out, and then you say Keeper if you like it, or Creeper if you don't love it or it doesn't make you happy.
Okay, so it's not an actual, like, creepy person.
No, it's just like a fun play on words.
Fun way to say no.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So the first one is caffeine after 8 p.m.
Sadly, that is always a keeper.
Yeah, fair enough.
Absolutely. Writing at 3 a.m. in pajamas.
That is actually my prime writing time, so that's a keeper. I just wish that I don't get to do it as much now that I have little ones, but that my best writing was from like 9 p.m. to about 4 a.m. That's my sweet spot. I miss that spot.
Oh.
Absolutely. I think it's probably because like you're more emotional when you are a bit like sleep deprived. So I feel like you're able to tap into a bit more creativity. I think I heard about that somewhere,
Wow.
but I could be wrong.
I
Don't
did
quote
not
me
know
on
that.
it.
For me, I think it's also because the world is quiet. So it's like it was suddenly like there was no nagging voice that was like, I should check my email. I should, check my phone. I should check social media. Like everyone else is asleep. It's just quiet time now. It's just me. I'm the only one awake in the world, it sort of feels like. And it's just me and this story, and it's easier to sink into it. During the day, there's so much more like, especially now, it's like, are the nannies texting me? Is something going on? Did I remember to start dinner? All of these things that all pull me out. And so I miss that, just being able to like fall deep into it and just be in there for hours and kind of resurface like, what time is it? Oh my gosh, the sun's rising. Okay, it's bedtime, I miss that.
Totally. And what about playlists inspired by your characters?
That's a keeper. I do that sometimes, yeah.
That's cool.
I love that. Autographing books with glitter pens.
It's funny because I say keeper, but my husband despises glitter. So he thinks that glitter is like the worst thing that has ever happened to the world because it gets everywhere. And so he would say, what is wrong with you? Don't sign people's books in glitter pens. But I love glitter pens.
Me too. I guess
More
it
glitter,
depends.
the better.
Depends on the person, exactly. And what about eating snacks while revising, even if the keyboard suffers?
That's a keeper.
What's your go-to revising snack?
It tends to be that I eat a lot of gummy candies because they're not that messy. And I can kind of line them up on my keyboard and like, okay, if I hit a certain word count, then I can have one. It's sort of sad at the same time because it's sort of like a little execution line. There's like all these little gummy bears are sitting there staring at me, like waiting for their end. But, it's delicious.
Clever though, too.
I love that
because
so much.
It's not going to be messy, exactly.
Absolutely. It's like a horse walking with like a carrot in front of its head. It's like you're like motivating yourself to keep going.
Yeah, exactly.
And now we have some fun kind of fast questions to answer. What is one of your favorite go-to dinners on a weeknight?
Any sort of pasta, because I can make it pretty quick and my kids actually eat it.
We love pasta.
We love pasta
exactly.
so much.
And now going back to when you were a teenager, Shannon, what's a piece of advice you would give to your teenage self?
I would tell myself that it is okay to not have everything figured out and that it is good to just try stuff and you'll figure it all out eventually.
I love that. It's such an important reminder to know that, it's okay to kind of ride the wave instead of always trying to be like 5 steps ahead of it.
Absolutely. And what is something that you do every day that brings you a small bit of happiness?
Boy, that's such an obvious answer as a mom is that I get to cuddle my kiddos, but there really is nothing better, especially at the ages that they're at right now because they're just so snuggly. They're 2 and 4. So they're like extremes. They are tantrums or cuddles, And so one minute they are screaming because the world has ended because their cup has knocked over. And then the next minute they're just like, Mom, I need a hug. And so, yeah. Kiddo cuddles.
That's
so cute.
That's adorable. And do you have a motivational quote you love and remember? And if so, what?
I wish I did, but I've never really been great at remembering like quotes and stuff. So I guess the closest I have is that I tend to hear from Finding Nemo, Dory's like, just keep swimming, that kind of like, that seems to pop up in my head. That, and I also have a tendency to tell myself I can do hard things. because when something starts to feel hard, you start to feel like you can't do it. And so it's, no, I can do hard things. And so
those are such good little,
What do
they're
you
very
mean?
short.
You know them.
Exactly. They're short, but they're so good.
that's as long as my brain is able to retain. I know some people, they'll have like these elaborate quotes that they're, and they'll know exactly who said them. I'm like, my brain doesn't work that way. I don't remember that stuff.
You've got your second graphic novel coming out. So where can we shop it, and when will it be out?
Yeah, so it's kind of available wherever books are sold. It's in 2 formats. It's in technically there's also the ebook, but it's coming out simultaneously in hardcover or paperback. So it's really kind of your preference on that. It seems to be graphic novels are more commonly favored in the paperback format. Just that seems to be more common for people. So we are doing that, but there is a hardcover version for people who are like, no, I want that nice, shiny, like hard protected thing. And it's really wherever books are sold. It's going on sale December 2nd. And honestly, I am so excited for this one. Like, it was always my dream to see my books adapted into a graphic novel, because that artist in me from the beginning, to finally have someone else take what was in my head and draw it for me, was just so cool. And I gotta say, I love the part 1. It's amazing. But this second part, because it has so many of the like really intense scenes in it, it is so cool to see that come alive, and so intense. Like, it made me cry a couple of times as I was working on it and stuff. It was just like, Sophie, what have I done to you? Like, so, and the art is just otherworldly cool. Like, the amount of detail that she was able to work in to the panels is so cool. So I really hope that readers love it as much as I do, because it is just such a special book that I absolutely adore.
I'm sure we will. I'm super excited, and we'll have it linked in the show notes for when this episode is live, so anyone can go and check it out and shop it. And thank you so much, Shannon, for joining us today. This has been such an incredible conversation, and we're so grateful for being able to speak with you. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much. This was really fun.
If you enjoyed this conversation with Shannon, we think you would love our interview with the creators of the viral and hit Dork Diaries series, Rachel Renee Russell and her daughter Nikki Russell. They talked with us all about how they've written a best-selling series as a mother-daughter duo, their advice for boosting your family bond, as well as tips for embracing who you truly are.
I met my first mean girl in elementary school.
Her very negative experiences that made her cry, that made her miserable, and taking lemons and making lemonade.
You can listen to our interview with Rachel and Nikki Russell now. It's linked in our show notes.
If you enjoyed this week's episode of Hack Your Happiness, please consider leaving us a 5-star review from wherever you're listening. It really helps us out. We really appreciate it, and it helps other people know that this is a great show to tune into.
See you next time.